Hi, Dan. Well, this is a real privilege to get to speak with you, Dan. I have been admiring
so much.
I've been admiring your work going back to the days of Solomon Kane. And
that's some weeks ago.
just a little. But with respect to John Wick, the franchise itself, what you and Chad have done over the last 3 films is build and build and build with beauty. There is so much beauty in the John Wick films until now we get to John Wick Chapter 4. And this is truly a piece of art. This is not something we see in action films. Knowing Chad, it doesn't surprise me that he would want this. And knowing your work, it doesn't surprise me. But it's something new in the genre. But to see the progression over the past few films of your collaboration and along with Keanu, it is just breathtaking to watch this film. And one of the highlights for me is what you have done using lighting. The lighting is so critical in this film because it allows you to then pick up surface textures such as water, cobblestone, architectural influences, mirrors, glass. And with the way you light this film, we are totally immersed and it's very sensory. And then you're going wide with so many of the shots that we really become immersed in this world. Dan, it is one of the most exquisite cinematic experiences I have ever watched.
Oh, you make me so happy. Thank you.
Where do you even, because you've got groundwork. You, Keanu, Chad, you've done the groundwork for 2 prior films together for John Wick. Where do you even start with John Wick Chapter 4? Because I can imagine you get this script, and as insane as the stunts and fight choreography have been in the past, this is entirely in the stratosphere with this film. So you get this script, you're talking with Chad, talking with Keanu. Where do you even start to bring in these very painterly cinematic elements with the lighting, with your distinctive use of color, and how you're going to shoot this wide, handheld, dollies, cranes? What's this jumping off point for you with this one?
Yeah, the problem is when you have made number 2 and 3. I think number 2 was the easiest one to do because that was my first one, and then I really loved number 1, but I didn't do that, as you know. And then we made number 3. We have to go a little bit more powerful, and then I like number 3 a lot. And then Keanu and Chad invited me after number 3. They invited me to Japan for a week, just to look into the Japanese world, because I've never been to Japan, and those guys should go over there. And they said, "Come on, Dan, be our date." So I jump into the plane with those guys. And there's so much into the world of John Wick, so as a cinematographer, it's just a dream to be together with those guys. But of course, we realized very, very fast, we have to do something that was more outstanding. And that was, in the beginning, a little bit complicated because we was very, very happy about number 3 and said, could we really go further? But then we decided to, change the camera package, changing the lighting, change everything. And of course, it's a long discussion together with Kevin, the production designer, myself, Keanu, and Chad. And especially Chad, he's so precise about where he wants to go, and we have been together for those 3 movies. So it's knew right away we wanted to go bigger, and it has to be, all the locations have to be bigger, the color palette has to be more powerful, and of course the action has to be like more breathtaking, and that's of course on Keanu's shoulders, poor guy. But what he's doing is so fantastic because, you know, he's not a young kid anymore, but he's doing most of his stunts himself. And of course that is like a privilege to work together with him because he's so much into the movie. So that was our beginning, and then you'd start to read the screenplay and talk about where should that be, what should the color palette be there. But it's a very long and very slow process because it's, you don't want, you know, there's no rules when you're coming into a John Wick movie because it's a kind of a ballet.
Mm-hmm.
And we just want to do it, you know, when you have all this, it's a thin red line because that colorful palette, you know, it could go on the wrong side, but, you know, I'm very happy about the look. And of course, we try to control that as much as we could and try, you know, let's have a lot of moving lights, you know, let's try to make the lights much more organic. Let's make the light much more part of the fights. So, you know, the people are going in and out of lights, and we have spinning heads and all that kind of stuff, just getting a third dimension into the lighting and the camera movements.
Well, you know, something that I really appreciate that I noticed is that your primary locations of Japan, Jordan, which is where we start, Berlin, Paris, each one has a distinctive look, yet it's still very synergistic and very cohesive with the film as a whole. And light and color play so heavily into each of these segments, such as with Jordan, you really play to the light and the gold of the sun versus a bright yellow of the sun, because you've got yellowish white with the sand, and then you've got John Wick in black, just so striking. And go in Japan, it's a lot darker, and you've got some beautiful, that inky blue-black and negative space that you make use of, with tiny pops of color at night. And then Berlin and Paris are just off the charts. I mean, Berlin, you've got that nightclub working with water, which you have to tell me how you designed that whole thing, because that was beyond impressive. And of course, Paris, the golden warmth that we feel, which is it ends up being very metaphoric as the sun's setting. With Jordan, it's almost like the sun is rising for John Wick.
Exactly, that was the plan, you know. But we can start with the nightclub. You know, we just want to do very early. Chad had this idea. He said, you know, I want to have water. I want to have a lot of water in this movie. And you know, when you're being water is fantastic because it's very organic. It's really, really fantastic. But it's not easy to do that because there's big waterfalls. And when you're getting into the practical world, you know, everything has to be secure because you don't want to have any accidents with false power and all that stuff. And then we were looking for, as I said before, we want to go big. We want to go. The nightclub could not be big enough, but we want to shoot it indoors because, you know, you could have choosing outdoors locations, but we want to go into a nightclub. We want to have the feeling we are coming into a nightclub. So we were scouting a lot for that place, and then I think it was an old steel factory, a generator or something like that in Berlin. You know, it was huge. It was really, really big. And again, we were just sure about we want to have the water effects and we want to have the color palette moving around in the shot. You know, we want to have this like coming from blue to red, going to amber, going to steel blue. We want to have that palette of organic lighting changing all the time. And of course, design that, it takes a while, and it takes a while for everybody to realize, you know, when you see it in the pre-light, it's not something you can just imagination, because when you see that on the plate, you know, should the green section be a little bit longer? Is the red too strong? Or you know, it's just all this kind of very, very interesting discussions between me and Chad. And it's a dream to work with him because he's, as I said before, he's so precise and he knows so much where he wants to go. But on the other hand, he's very, very open for input, and that is what we did on the main nightclub. And when we are coming to that sequence with the card playing, we have a discussion, should we go for a very small, a very super, into a cellar or something like very, very small, and then we decide to go on a huge room as well, because that was actually on the top of the real nightclub. And then we have this idea about we want to have something more into the lighting setups. So we make those circles of blue lights behind the big guy and on Keanu's side as well. So we have decided these wheels where we have some moving heads spinning around, and it's just giving us something unpleasant to the scene, and I think that works really well.
Mm-hmm. And what I also love with the way you have lit the nightclub scene with the variances of the light, because of the water, because of that industrial steel sense that we also get, it's very prismatic in how the light shifts and changes, which is what happens with light and water. You get prisms of color. And I just thought that was so beautifully executed and designed. It really took my breath away.
Fantastic, thanks. But, we spend a lot of time to design that because, we have some ideas, as I said, let's do it like that and then. But when you're standing there on the pre-light days, we were pre-lighting for a couple of weekends. We were shooting during the week and then the pre-light in the weekends. And, of course, because it's so huge, so, you cannot change the things on the day. You have to be prepared when you're coming with a shooting crew. So we spend a lot of time in the weekends to design that color palette together with the water and all that, and it was it was really fantastic. And again, as I said, we changed the camera package. We went large format. We went Alexa, LF, and anamorphic lenses. We scaled everything up a little bit.
I'm guessing for the nightclub sequences, you were also shooting a lot of, doing a lot of crane and dolly work on that one.
Yes, we did. We had a Chapman waterproof crane and waterproof heads for all the fights in the water, when they're coming down there.
You should be an old hand with water after working with Guillermo on The Shape of Water.
I'm not afraid of water. No, I think water is fantastic because it's really a third dimension to the image. It's fantastic. So we are deciding from scene to scene how we want to tell the story. Some scenes we want to shoot everything on crane. Sometimes we want to shoot a split between crane, Steadicam, and handheld. But we are not going in handheld a lot because we want to show Keanu and the other stunt guys and the actors the performance because they're doing it so well. We don't have to hide anything like you have to do in some other movies, because you're so much into stunt people. And again, the way Keanu and his stunt team and the other actors are performing, it's so much like a ballet, I think, and you want to see that, of course, in big wide shots. And he do it so well, Keanu, so it's amazing.
Especially with the nightclub scene, you've got one of the best martial arts guys in the business. You got Scott Adkins there playing Killer. You want to see him and Keanu go at it. You've got Donnie Yen popping up throughout here.
Yeah, he was amazing.
You want to see as much as you can see of these guys because as the audience, when you know these are the actors there, this is them. We don't have digi-doubles there. This is them doing this. So
that is a guy.
Yeah. Paris is you just knocked it out of the park with everything in Paris.
Paris was tough, I can tell you. It was tough. It was really tough in Paris because there's so many stuff, and everybody knows Paris, and it's a wonderful, wonderful city to be in. But it's complicated to shoot there.
Now you were shooting were you shooting night for day in Paris?
Yes, we did. The Saint-Kirk sequence, when they're standing up, the end sequence is shot in the nighttime. Because, we want to have sunrise, and sunrise is like 5 minutes.
Right.
And it was a big scene, so somebody get that crazy idea, that was me, to make, let's do this on location night for day. So we that. Of course, there was, again, a lot of prep from me and my gaffer and my electrical team. So we have some huge cranes up there to make this kind of steel blue night feeling, pretty dark. And then we have some big dinos on some other huge cranes, so we can just actually, we could raise the sun into the shot. So all that is done practical. That is not fake. Of course, the background is changed and all that, but the light is as it is. We have the sunrise is done on location on top of St. Kirk.
Wow. And you've got that really climactic, you've got the climactic chase scene in Paris, and then we also have that to die for apartment building scene earlier in the film that just, it looks and feels like a one-shot. The entire thing going from room to room, the whole, the central aspect. Talk to me about creating that, because that is really a masterful creation.
We shot it as one shot. Of course, again, we prepped it, rehearsed it. We have the stunt unit we went in and talked about how the camera movement should do, and then the stunt people rehearsed it, and we came in and shot it. And we shot it in one single shot, and of course, they're doing some blends because one take is better.
Sure.
But we shot it in one, and we shot it maybe 3 or 4 times, and then they blended together, and we are cutting. I think they're cutting down a couple of times and coming up again. But in the dailies, it's one long shot where again the light is changing, and you have to have all the lights outside the set because you're seeing everything. And again, when you're coming into that area where the bakery is, you have this feeling, but there's a neon sign outside the window, so the light is 100% unrealistic, but it's just the way it works so well because another part of the apartment seems like it's sunrise.
Right.
But we try to paint with the light and make the light dramatic for this kind of scene, and I think it works really well.
It's absolutely spectacular, and I love with that apartment scene that you give us that sensibility with the overhead shot, so that we really, it sets the tone, and we can really feel the chaos that is happening, and how the scope of it. That's one of the really cool things with that segment, Dan, is with that overhead shot, we really get a great sense of the scope of the action that's taking place in a quote-unquote somewhat contained space. It works so...
Yeah, I think it works really well. But again, it's one of those shots you have to rehearse it a couple of times and then figure out, is that lighting cue the right thing when he's coming in? Because you don't want to have the lighting cue going down to dark when you have to see some of the action. So again, the ballet has to be choreographed for the lighting, and all the other way around. And of course, that's another great thing to do because they're so precise. Keanu is so precise, so you can really do that. It's like a ballet sequence where the actors are going to be jumping in the right place, and he's going to do his stunt things on the right place, so we can cue the light there on that spot as well. So it is really it's a teamwork, and it's fantastic as all movie making is. It's a teamwork, and it's I think John Wick is a good example on that.
How long does it take you to do the lighting setups for these different sequences? Because it's one thing on paper. It's another thing when you're actually putting the lights up, placing them, and then doing your camera work with the light to see the result. What's the average amount of time you're spending on setups?
We are, all these big sequences is pre-lit. We're doing that in the weekends. So, and of course that's a lot of work for everybody because then you have to work 6 or 7 days a week. But all these, like for example, the top shot, that's like, I think we pre-light that over 2 weekends. So we're doing the camera one weekend, we are doing the camera move, and the next weekend we are doing the camera move and lighting the same day. And when we're doing this St. Kirk shot, we were shooting on the staircase, the big fight sequence on the staircase. So in the meantime, I was just walking up and down to the top of Saint-Clair to like pre-light that a little bit when they're rehearsing the stunt sequences. You know, you're just running around from one set to another as much as you can as a cinematographer. But otherwise, it's weekends. You know, we're doing a lot of work in pre-lights.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really good for Chad as well, you know, just to get the scene into his mind and brain, you know, because sometimes, you know, paper is one thing, but then you see it's like, how can we do that? And that was the same with the lobby, for example, in the hotel. When the fights start there, you know, the light is going off, and instead of just having like subtle green, we have moving heads, like rock and roll lights, you know, so the light is spinning around to just give it a little bit less subtlety, it's getting a little bit more scary, I think.
Something that you have done with this film, and to me, it reminds me of George Hurrell's gorgeous portraiture of Hollywood's most glamorous stars back in the 30s, 40s, is that...
Oh, the black and white,
yes.
Black and white movie, I've seen them.
But what you have done is, if you look at any Hurrell portrait, there's always a glint of light in the eyes. So we are drawn to the eyes. So any facial flaw that a starlet may have, you don't see it. You're so attracted to that glint of light in the eye. And I noticed that here, in particular with John Wick 4, that with the darkness and with light on the fringes, or a golden umber in the background, or at the foot of the church and lights shining upwards, or in the candlelit sequence, which is to die for, you always manage to bring light, like almost a golden glint, especially with Keanu as John Wick, to the eye. That is true mastery, Dan, to be able to capture that.
You know, Keanu is really, you know, he needs single source lighting. You know, he needs to have, you know, single source lighting, very like one side of his face has to be as dark as is there. And then, of course, you check the key light around as much as I can do. But, you know, I really like single source lighting with the light, you know, half of the face is falling off. And then even in the daytime, you know, when we shot that sequence where we have the Eiffel Tower in the back, you know, we have this daytime there, but it was very, very contrasty because we are using a lot of negative fill there. And again, I just keep the highlights up. I think that's important, to keep the highlight up, but the rest can go dark. And I think that's one of the reasons some of the faces looks so powerful. And, you know, Keanu looks amazing. He's a really stunning, good-looking guy.
Well, I personally think you should be his personal cinematographer on every film that he does. Because as good as he looks, you make him look even better.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I would love that. No, yeah, but, you know, so I think, you know, he's good on that. He needs to have this powerful light. You know, as soon as you're getting flat lighting on him, and first of all, Chad and me doesn't like flat lighting, so
right.
It's not a big deal. But when he's getting too flat, he's just losing his power, and I think that's the same for most of the actors. You know, single source lighting is just telling the story much better and showing the face and the performance really, really good.
Now that you have done this, and this truly is, I think, the finest work of your career, Dan, how do you top John Wick 4? How do you top your work here? How do you top perfection going forward in your career?
I just need, you know, because I'm working together with some really clever directors, you know, it's like, again, it's not me, it's me together with the director, you know, it's his vision. And I think it's very important to understand that as a cinematographer. I try to tell the story the director wants to tell. And I just try to do the lighting. And I think, you know, I don't know if you have seen The Color Purple, you know, it's coming out soon.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
The same, you know, you clever, very strong directors, you know, it's great. I think that is the key. And a bunch of people are helping me to do all this because I cannot do anything alone, you know. Filmmaking is a teamwork. I have the whole movies, everyone on the set is working together, and I think that is the key.
Dan, I can't thank you enough for taking time to speak with me. in such detail about John Wick 4. And again, this truly is, it is masterful. It is a cinematic piece of art, just beautifully done.
Thank you so much. Make me so happy you're saying that.